All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Drsirhan I'm an instructor of health services at Hudson County Community College, located in Jersey City, New Jersey. I teach in the allied health and in the STEM/biology division. My topic today is strategies to enhance learning using active learning. And one of the things I'm looking at in today's workshops is a lot of active learning. How many of you attended an active learning workshop already? So have I. And I'm sure a lot of these strategies you've already used or you're using, and some of you probably haven't used any of these strategies. So one of the things that we're going to be looking at is we want to define active learning and how do we use it. We're going to expose instructors to active learning strategies through some of the applicable college courses. Some strategies that transform traditional lectures into interactive ones. What are some of the excuses and obstacles that we use when trying to avoid active learning, and some of the tips that will allow us to overcome these obstacles. And then we're going to have a question answer. This is going to be an active learning workshop, so I'm going to have you guys engaged with me as well. So, the University of Michigan defines active learning as a process whereby students engage in activities like reading, writing, discussion, problem solving that promote analysis, synthesis, and evaluation of class content. George Washington University defines active learning as an instructional method that engages students in the learning process. So we kind of get that it requires students to do some kind of a meaningful learning activity that gets them all involved. So the first project for you guys is, I'm going to give you a case. I teach a class called Medical Law and Ethics. One thing that we discuss is abortion. And we discuss surrogate motherhood. And I'm going to tell you a case, and I need your opinion. And what you're going to do is, you're going to give me, take out a piece of paper and a pen. I'm not going to discuss abortion, because if we discuss abortion, we're going to have a debate, okay? So I'm going to tell you a case. In California, there's a nurse, a registered licensed nurse, who worked in a living facility, like a nursing home. And the nursing home's policy was simply, if any of the patients in the nursing home were required to need CPR, that we do not resuscitate, we call 911. That's the policy. And anybody who brings their family members into that nursing home signs a paper that says that they call 911. So there was a case of an 87-year-old woman who collapsed, who needed CPR. And there was a nurse on call. She called 911. And the dispatcher said, "Are you a doctor? Are you a nurse?" And she said, "I'm a nurse." "Miss, you need to do CPR." Said the company's policy is that we don't do CPR, we call 911. "Is there anybody around that can do CPR?" This is the 911 dispatcher. And she said, "There's no one around." "Miss, I need you to do CPR. It's the company's policy, there's no CPR." So my question to you is, was this ethical, was it right, or was it wrong? And I need 3 or 4 lines. And it's an individual project, we're not going to do a group. So take a couple of minutes to write your opinion. Any nurses in the room? Oh. I'm not going to take your opinion. So we're going to leave the nurses for the end, okay? Anybody not in a medical field or in any field? All right, great. So we'll start with you. What's your opinion?
As a human being, she was ethically required to do what needed to be done.
As a human being, she was ethically required to do what had to be done. Okay. Anybody else? Yes?
It depends. And it depends on whether or not the patient had a DNR. Do not resuscitate. Once the 911 person gave her permission to do CPR, then she could choose to do CPR or not, depending on how she felt her ethics were with the company. But it's going to depend.
Remember, the company's policy simply stated that we do not resuscitate. We only call 911.
But 911 gave her permission. Because
Okay?
if she's following 911 instructions, it gave her permission against the company policy.
Anybody on this side of the room? Yes.
I think policy and ethics are two competing things.
Okay.
So we're arguing, is it right for her to do CPR? I think most of us would agree with him that as a human, she should do it, but the policy is competing with that.
Okay. Great. Yes, sir.
Another comment is, I'm assuming that this patient now was in the hospital and they knew that the policy was not to do CPR. So my assumption is that they knew that and they were in that situation where they required it, so that was their own decision to be there, and that then they were not going to get the use of CPR when they were there. So that's another fact to take into the formulas, whether
Very
it's good
good.
or not.
Yes.
I have to say that this question, only in America, that it was the aspect of litigation that was the core issue, not and the nursing home is in the business, or quote, the business of ensuring that person has a quality of life.
Very good. Very good. So
But they were protecting their own.
So putting all that on the side, when we look at medical law and ethics, and we look at cases that happen in healthcare, we know that laws are made from cases. And notice, I mean, we're not going to go into the entire case, but notice, what did we just do right now? What did we do? We had a debate. We're actively engaged in a topic in medical law and ethics. Now, debating is just one active learning strategy and technique. We're going to look at other techniques. But in this case, what do? You alert the students, you wake them up. Something like this is done possibly at the beginning of the class. Right? When you do this at the beginning of the class, the students are alert, they're awake, they're into the topic for that day. So let's look at something, and I'll tell you, and I could speak for myself. When I was in college and when I went to graduate school, I remember walking into a classroom, and the classes I took were microbiology and pharmacology and anatomy and physiology, and they were 4-hour-long classes. And it was simply, I walk in, I sit down, I listen, the professor had the PowerPoint slides up, and I take notes, and that was the class. And if the professor felt bad for us every hour and a half, he gave us a 5 or a 10-minute break, and then we had to come back because we had another 1,000 slides to cover. Right? And so, no, this is what happened. So I remember when I started teaching, and it hasn't been, that long, but when I started teaching, the first thing I could remember was, I'm going to teach the same way I was taught. And that's what I started doing. Because the first class I ever taught was pharmacology. And I walked into class, and I was the professor, and I spoke, and the students sat there, and they took notes. And then I noticed, I said, there's somebody on their phone. And you'll see your typical adult 35 or 40-year-old student on the phone, and some of the students are older than I am, and sometimes I shy away from saying, hey, why are you on your cell phone? There's no cell phones in class. And then you'll see some of the students on the laptop. Some of them are daydreaming, and what I'm doing is I'm just spitting out information, and I'm talking. And I know I'm the master of what I'm doing, and I feel like I'm doing a great job. And then I started to say, this is not going to work, and I started attending a lot of workshops on flipping the classroom, on how to engage our students, and I started to use them slowly. And you know what I found? I found that my students' attendance was better than it was before. I found that my students were not using their cell phone as much. I found that they weren't daydreaming as much, because this is the student in the traditional classroom today. They're daydreaming, they're listening to their iPods, and some of the females have long hair and they'll put the headphones, right? And then you can't see them. And they're inside, and they look like a CIA agent, so you won't even know what's going on. They're text messaging on their phones. And they have so many techniques, text messaging. They could go like this without even looking at the phone, and they're texting. And and they're under the tables, and all these things. Or playing on a laptop computer because the college is equipped with Wi-Fi, and all the students have Wi-Fi. And what do? Sometimes I used to walk around and their shoes, some of the females were shoe shopping for shoes. Some of them are on jcpenney.com. So, and I'll tell you, because the lecture method is very poor. And it's a poor instructional approach for you just to stand there and just spit out information. Look at Cornell University says, the concentration of our students today begin to decline after 10 to 15 minutes. How many of you agree with this? Very good. So here's 100%. You know, their concentration does decline after 10 to 15 minutes. And this is where active learning and student engagement comes into play, okay? And how do we know that their concentration declines after 10 to 15 minutes? Because what do you see them do? What are some of the things that they do? Daydream, listening to their iPads. They'll pick up their phone, right? So this is something I like. I've attended so many workshops on active learning and student engagement. I found that they're very effective. I found that student test scores are so much better. I find my students learning the material a lot better. And I find myself not being bored. I don't know, as an instructor, do you really want to stand up here for 3 hours and just teach and teach? We want action, you know. And again, you know, some professors will tell you, well, you know, all these active learning approaches, they don't work for all the subjects. We're not asking you to use all of them. Some work better. No, I'm serious. Some work better for certain subjects than others, and that's a fact. And we'll look at that. So obviously, why are they important? Learning is not a spectator sport. I think for a lot of you it was, and I think for me it was, where we sat there and we just listened. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And let me ask you this. I'm going to ask you a question, and and I want you to be honest. How many of you thought that it was an effective strategy, really, when you were a student? Think about how you learn. And so let me ask you, some of you, what made it effective for you? What made it effective? Yes? You learned. Okay, so, okay.
I was motivated.
I was?
I was motivated for it, so it was effective because I was hungry for the knowledge.
Very good.
I'm a read-write kind of person.
Okay.
I'm also visual, so when I take notes, I would remember them, and that's how we grew up, taking notes.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
And we baby boomers, we started out very young in life, being taught how to sit still and listen in church and with around elders. And then we went into school and we were doing the same thing, so we were just indoctrinated that this was how we were supposed to learn.
And then what I didn't get from the instructor listening to him, because I wanted to make a good grade, I had to go and make sure I taught myself and break it down so I could be sure that I understood it.
Yes, sir.
I'll have to take the opposite viewpoint. I sat through 4 years of education and learned nothing. I thought I did until I started to teach the same subject. And I thought, I started learning this stuff as I was teaching. I thought, oh my God, I wish I learned this when I was in school. This was so good. And then I went back to my notes and I'm like, dang, I wrote all this stuff down when I was in school and I didn't remember one thing of it.
And I will agree with that statement, because I know, and I've taught probably every biology course / health science course there is, and I'll tell you the courses that I do so well in teaching, and I'm really well at, were my professors who are actually actively engaging the class. And the other thing is that I was expecting more of you to raise your hand and say that it worked for you, because the students back then, I find, were more disciplined. You walked in, the professor was the biggest thing on the planet, respect, right? And it didn't matter what he said or she said, it was respect. And hello, professor, and how are you, professor? You know, some of the older students that I have, much older students that I have, who come from other countries too, where, they went to college in their country and they came here and they sit in class and they hold the same standard of how they learned back 20 or 30 or some 30 years ago, So it worked. But the question is, are we willing to change to work with today's student? Because the fact of the matter is that today's student is definitely this, 100%. A lot of them are spoiled. A lot of them are addicted to their cell phone. I find the cell phone the biggest issue in academia and teaching. And you cannot, very difficult to get a student to take their cell phone